Good gracious, ladies and gentlemen, a most extraordinary calamity has struck. The Empire's finest invention, a miraculous machine of time itself, has fallen into the wrong hands. Now, dreadful fiends from across the ages, spiteful mutants, demons, and horrors beyond imagination, march upon our proud West. But fear not, lion-hearted adventurers, for history's most unlikely heroes have answered the call. General Cornwallis, Old Hickory himself, Andrew Jackson, the Maestro of Mayhem, Johann Sebastian Bach, and the last Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. Play in daring single-player or rip-roaring local co-op. Blast monstrous bosses, conquer infernal bullet hells, unleash your arsenal of gadgets, gizmos, and glorious firepower. The fate of Western kind, and indeed the very course of history itself, lies in your hands, brave man of the West. Stand fast, stiffen that upper lip, and charge forth into the surprising adventures of Westmen! Wishlist now on Steam, before it's too late.
Our children are priceless, and we would do anything to protect them. So why aren't you using Go Free to protect them from the most harmful ideas? Decades in the making, Go Free is a simple yet brilliant practice designed to free us from destructive socio-political ideas. As words are the tools with which we think, Go Free promotes precise, simple, and targeted language to counteract psychological warfare. When you go free of the system's control over your word choice, you liberate your thinking. As you grow, you can empower others. And the most important thing you can do is inoculate our children against the ideas that are meant to harm them.
Join us for White Wellbeing.
Yay!
Let's eat.
The last bit, but I'm doing fine, thank you. And you, Julia?
I am also doing good, well. So yeah, I'm a little nervous because it's my first time, but well, we all have to learn, and I'm excited about our Westman of the day. So hopefully everyone else will be. Some people might have heard of him already. Uh, and he's not like the typical, the typical type of Westman that we've been doing have been very flashy, which is great because, and very masculine choices, right? Like scientists who invented very manly things. And I have always been interested in the fiber arts, and those have been some of our biggest innovations. So I wanted to do, and there's so many men, Westmen, that we can talk about who have innovated cloth making and all of everything that goes into making fibers. So there's many men more to talk about with regards to this. But I thought this was a good starting place because this is the first time I heard of such an innovation many years ago. So I will start the intro. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Shade Tree White Wellbeing No White Guilt space. We hold this space every day at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on X. Over here, that means it's 8 p.m. in Germany. We are a no white guilt community that meets to practice the concepts and lexicon developed by Jason Kona, Mr. No White Guilt himself. You can find him here on X as at No White Guilt, NWG, with the N, the W, and the G, so the first letter of each word capitalized, and then the last three letters capitalized, on YouTube and elsewhere as simply No White Guilt, and on the web at nowhiteguilt.org. We discuss a wide variety of topics of interest to white people and look for ways to apply solutions. I am Julia, your host, and my co-hosts today are whoever wants to jump in. I'd gladly love to have a co-host, so I might invite some of you. Um, we run pretty casual here, but I do ask that you raise your hand if you would like to jump in. Otherwise, I will call on speakers in turn for their thoughts. If you would like to hop into the conversation, just request a mic and we'll get you set up. We only ask that you comport yourself as much as possible to the Go Free lexicon and dialectic and act as a proper lady or gentleman of the West as applicable. So let us start. And let's make sure I have everyone set up who wants to speak. Okay, I think everyone should be set up now. So I chose, as you should be able to see, let's see if it's in the Jumbotron. Uh, It is not in the Jumbotron. Okay, let me add it to the Jumbotron again. Ah, I see what I did. Okay. Okay, it should show up now. Yes, excellent. Okay, so John Kay was born in 1704, and he was a son of yeomen. He was born in Lancashire, which is basically what people think of as Manchester in England. And he was a son of 10 children. His father, like I said, was a yeoman father. But he was one of the younger children. And so he didn't get any type of significant inheritance. And when he was 14, he left the home to become an apprentice. And he was only away for a few months when he returned home and claimed that actually it was within a month. And he claimed to have already mastered the business. And he apprenticed with a hand loom reed maker. So at this time, making cloth, which is when you weave, we have the warp, which is the vertical part of the woven cloth. And then we have the weft, which is the horizontal part and which weaves back and forth across the warp. So this had to be done manually at the time with the use of a what was made from reed. So the shuttle at the time was made from reed, and it required at least two people. And for really big looms, it required four people. So not very efficient. So after just a month of claiming to have mastered hand loom, the reed hand loom, he designed a metal substitute. And this became known as the flying shuttle. And it was vastly better. It was so fast that when people saw it in action, and that's the reason they called it the flying shuttle, is that I'm going to read a quote here. It was described as traveling at a speed which cannot be imagined, so great the shuttle can only be seen like a tiny cloud which disappears the same instant. So it was very fast and it went back and forth, and it didn't require someone on the other side to catch it. So instead of having two or four people with a larger loom, you could have one person using just this one device to weave and produce much more material. So this was a major innovation. But there were a lot of problems during this time in England regarding the textile industry because cotton was becoming big, but England was well known for its woolen production and it didn't want to have to compete with the cotton industry. And so, even though they were trying to import a lot of cotton from India, which was known at the time as Hindustan, that there were parliamentary laws that were passed to prevent that. And so things were kind of slowed down based on all these weavers and everyone involved, the spinners, the carders, the herders, everyone involved was used to their standard practice. And once these new innovations came in, they fought against them. And of course, we see this with every new innovation that occurs. There's always people who say, who are against it. Usually, most people, and definitely back in the day, it seemed to be most people. There were a lot of riots over these types of things. P- Innovators were attacked in their homes. Uh, Sometimes the homes were burned down. It got quite bad. And poor Mr. John Kay, um, who was quite an enterprising man, he started traveling around the country just showing people his device and how to use it. Basically, just being an excellent man, trying to help people be more efficient. Then he returned to his home area and married a woman from there. And he was 19 at the time. They went on to have 10 children. They had another two who died in childhood, but they had 10 surviving children, which is pretty great. And several of his sons took up the industry with him. So it became a real family business. Uh, Unfortunately, he had a lot of problems with trying to patent it. Now, he did patent this in 1733. This is the flying shuttle. And unfortunately, people didn't want to. There were a lot of issues with patents in these days, and people were using his device or makeshift versions of his device, and he took them to court, but he always lost. So he would actually lose money taking them to court, and so it, it was never held. And what was worse was a group of people who didn't want his shuttle to be patented or the patent to be upheld actually formed, and anyone who was using his device and didn't want to have to pay up could join up with them and they would support that person in court so that Kay didn't win and didn't have his patent upheld. So that was very I would say unwestman-like, um, very greedy, selfish behavior. But and as a result of this, he left for France, and he didn't speak any French, but he still assimilated very well into France, and he brought several of his sons, and he was able to sell his device not for as much money as he wanted, but for a regular like yearly salary, and he was able to go around the country and teach everyone how to use it. And throughout his life he continued to tinker with and produce a variety of engineering devices which aided in mostly textile production but also a few other things. And he was truly a great man of the West, and one of the first that I heard of when I was a teen, I believe. And I thought that maybe many people wouldn't have heard of him because while he is definitely a local hero, he is not much heard of in many places, I would think, outside of Manchester. So I'd be curious to hear, have any of you heard of him? Are any of you familiar with the politics and economics of that whole industry? during that century, and also during the next century, it got even worse. So lots more to talk about there. Open to anyone. Hans.
I remember when I was little watching a video of this flying loom, and it was very impressive. It stayed with me till today, and I'm looking on YouTube now, and there's lots of videos of these flying looms. People are still using them. But so this custom tailors that make custom clothing in South Africa, it's a dying industry. So it's mostly old white males, and as they retire or die, this becomes somewhat of a lost art. And I remember a few years ago, I was at one of these businesses, um, and the tailor, because I asked him, because they have different material that you can choose. Now, the material, the cost of the material is related to the thickness of the fiber. So the finer the fiber, the more expensive the material. Tweed is the thickest, the shortest fiber, so that's the least expensive. But these thick jackets that you make. But I asked him because I was looking at the finer material, and the price differences were so large. And I asked him, so this is all the same fiber. Why is this one twice the price of the other one? And he says, no, it is the weaves are patented, and there are weaves that are wrinkle free because the weave is such that the weave is already wrinkled. So they weave it in a way where I take my hand and you crush it, and then you leave it and there's no wrinkle. It was amazing. But it's the first time that I heard that these weaves are patented.
That's amazing. I didn't know that weaves could be patented, but it does make sense. I know that there are patented forms of viscose, which is a fiber which is made from tree fiber essentially. And so, like, lensing is one of them, and Ecovera is another. I'm sure there are others. So, yeah, it makes perfect sense that other fibers would also be patented. And yeah, it's very amazing what has been done, especially with synthetics. But I am truly astounded as a fan of natural fibers personally. I'm in the process of getting rid of all synthetic fibers in my wardrobe right now, which, by the way, is very difficult, especially when it comes to underwear. It's very difficult to find underwear that have like zero elastan or any type of elastic material, even though we do have natural latex and they do make natural latex. But of course, it doesn't last as long and it's more expensive. And I have yet to find underwear made with natural latex in the waistband. So for it to be 100% natural, I would have to basically make my own, and I do so. But underwear is just not as fun as sewing like a skirt or a dress. At least, but maybe I'll come to understand the joys of making my own underwear soon. Um, One of the things I thought about when I was reading about John Kay was just this idea of patents in general, how it seems like it must be an idea that we came up with, an idea that Westman came up with. I, I can't imagine another race coming up with the idea of patents, although I'm happy, of course, to be corrected. But it's interesting to me, of course, that there were so many people who were, uh, well, I mean, that's still, of course, the case today with piracy of internet intellectual property. So I guess it's always been an issue, and I think it ties well to anti-whiteism because a fight between honor and honoring someone's intellectual property and selfish, greedy individualism. So I thought that was interesting. Hans?
I I th- I agree, because if you if you think about copying someone else's work, and patents, and the value that they provide, um, it seems like other races are known for how they violate patents. But there's another facet of patents also. The one is, of course, that you want to reward the person who did the work. But the other facet of it, I think, is that um, you want to give someone a reason for communicating his idea, because what you don't want is someone inventing the most amazing thing, but he doesn't want to communicate it until he has the resources to make it into a product. And then a buzz hits him or something, and then he dies and it's gone. Think about Isaac Newton and calculus. If he thought that he had to protect that by not telling anyone about it. In fact, he didn't tell anyone about it for a very long time, until von Leibniz seemed to be getting closer and closer, and then he published. But I think that's another facet of patents, and the fact that um, that patents have now it is now being subverted totally in a way that was not the original intention. Because what's happening now is people would look at something that's already in the public domain, and then they will go and squat those patents, so that if someone tries to make it into a product, then suddenly there are all these what they do. This is very clever, because they don't trigger the litigation immediately. They wait till the product is successful, because otherwise there's no money in it. And there are companies, the whole company, they of course they don't they wouldn't make their mission statement that. Their mission statement would be something like next generation innovation. But what it really is they squat patents, which is not at all. And I think when we recapture our destiny, we will definitely look at that, because we want the two good parts of patents, which is number one, rewarding the inventor, and number two, giving the inventor a reason to tell other people before he dies.
Yeah, really excellent points. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, it made me think of John Hargreaves, who created the spinning jenny, which was needed to produce more yarn, because once you have a way to weave more quickly, you need to be able to produce yarn more quickly. So that innovation sparked another innovation, as they do. And he did what you alluded to, or suggested, which is that he used it himself in his own factory for several years before patenting it. Uh, so yeah, it really does have that effect. And my late husband, he worked for Amgen, which it was at the time the biggest pharmaceutical company in the world. And he had several patents before his death. And they patented like everything, and things that you wouldn't think should be patentable. And I think it's gone a little too far, where they, as you say, these companies, very large companies, will just patent anything that's remotely patentable. And they've made it too broad, I think. And they haven't there's not enough of a tie between the people who make the patent and the people who like sometimes it's the company that's making the patents, and even though the person is the name officially on the patent, it's really the company that has control over the patent. And like you say, they're just lying in wait to use it. It's not because it's already actively in use. So there needs to be some more maybe proof showing that it's something that's already in use and it's not just sitting around waiting to be hopped on. Or that needs to be maybe a different type of patent. We give those types of patents that are lying around less value, and they don't last as long. Biosphere?
Yeah, this guy's interesting. I've never heard of him before. And I was thinking about how you were saying that the people were rioting and not happy about it, and that was reminding me of what has happened to Jason for the last 3 decades. And people are very rarely happy for the for the new invention, and they don't like it that their current secure looking way of work and job and such is being threatened and changed. People don't like change, and just like the Jacebergs who've been peddling their stuff for generations don't like Jason because he puts them out of business. And so I was just thinking about those similarities there, and certainly this is one of those innovations that has made clothing quite the revolution. And while I don't particularly like the stuff that you can buy these days, because it's just so, since everything was moved over to China and the Orient, it seems like the quality of everything has really gone downhill. It's like the shirts that I buy, they will last. I've timed it out. They last about 50 washings and dryings in the washer dryer, and then the material around the collar starts to disintegrate, and it just looks like it's been eaten through by moths or something. And I've complained to the company that makes them, and they do nothing. So it's obviously a built-in redundancy on their part to make sure that you have to buy new clothes every 50 washings. And that wasn't necessarily the way that things were made in the past. It's like I have a sweater that was made in America, and it's a white knit sweater, and it still has the Made in America label on it. And I got that in, I would say it was like around 1990. And I still have it. I still wear it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It has not disintegrated. It hasn't fallen apart. I had one little problem with some stitching at the top where the panels come together. And I had a lady who's a neighbor here who does sewing, sew it back together, because it's a great sweater. I don't want to get rid of it. And that's the way clothes used to be. And when we went into this super duper mass production thing and shipped everything overseas, that's when we got into this throwaway kind of economy stuff that has become really the way everything is now made, where it doesn't matter if it's an automobile or a refrigerator or a stove or whatever it is, it's built to fall apart in a certain amount of time so that you have to buy a new one. And that's the model for making money now. Rather than quality, it's quantity. And if you look at that again, that completely flies in the face of what we're told about. We're supposed to love the environment and Everything should, um, uh, last a long time, and we don't want stuff that's disposable. And yet, everything that is made today has a set shelf life to fall apart, and we have to buy it again. So those were some of the things that were going through my mind when you're talking about the sky, and I'll pass it on. Thanks.
I, again, completely agree, as I usually do with everyone here. Uh, it's crazy to think about how many clothes we have these days. Back in the day, people would have like two outfits. They would have their everyday outfit, and then like the average person, and then they would have like their Sunday outfit or special occasion outfit, and that was it. But those outfits were very, very well made, and if anything needed repairing, of course, it was repaired at home. If a sock got a hole in it, it wasn't thrown away. You darned the sock. And we've lost a lot of those skills. Most people can't sew, let alone, darn a sock or even put a button back on. So there's a lot that has changed. But I would argue that regarding planned obsolescence, sort of the seeds go back further because even back in um, like earlier in the last century, people were buying a lot more clothes than normal. And so it became normal to not wear the same clothes every day and to have, for the average person again, to have a wide variety of clothes. And this was, of course, made possible by all these innovations by wonderful Westmen, making it possible to make cheaper material. Um, and of course, clothes were much better made. I completely agree. I have clothing from high school, so that's the 90s, or I had. It was lost, destroyed in a flood, unfortunately. But that was perfectly good and much better than the average clothing that I can find now. Everything these days, it's so thin. I'm just shocked by how thin everything is. And also, it's just full of synthetics if it's not completely made of synthetics. And yeah, it's a real struggle to find those things. And also fabric shops have disappeared. So when I first moved, to Germany in 2012, here in Cologne, there were like 7 fabric shops, and they were had several. Some of them had like 5 rooms, and they were filled with bolts of fabric, and many of them were all natural, and they were all kinds of patterns and colors, and it was amazing and great. And now they're all gone, and there's basically only one fabric shop. And there's one that's upholstery, but it's almost all synthetics, and it's not really for clothing. And then they have like 2 tables for of like cotton, very, very basic cottons for uh actual clothing, but almost everything else is for upholstery. And then there's an one table, which I'm pretty sure will be gone by the end of the year in a department store. And then there is this other store which has basically one room that's not very full. So it's completely changed. Um, I believe Hans was next, and then the Blue Flame.
Um, I just wanted to comment on the weavers rioting. Um, that is, this is something that is important to realize, and that is, if you threaten someone's investment, then all bets are off. Now, in the case of the weavers rioting, they were concerned about their livelihoods. And you can see in the way that Jason communicates with other content creators, he tries to communicate in a way where we don't threaten their investment in their audience, because what he will usually say is that we are not interested in events of the day. We are not interested in the things that that is the engine for their businesses. We are interested in spreading these concepts um, that will help everyone in Western civilization. So this is always important to remember that when you put your message in a position um, where the other party feels threatened, then no amount of good is going to convince that person to buy into your message, because at the end of the day, he has his own selfish goals, and if he thinks he's not going to be able to put bread on the table, then that's not going to sell.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely a good point. If you want to maintain good relations with people, don't threaten them. Um, the blue flame, please come in.
Hello. Well, it seems to be working on this. Ah, there we go. Yeah, I just wanted to add a little something in there, Julius, when you were speaking about people having, back in the day, having like their suit and then their everyday clothing. If you go back far enough in history, I suppose in our history during medieval days, there was also this very interesting um, aspect, I guess, to this that they used to have, is that a lot of the common man's clothing, let's say around the year, say 1550, I'm just throwing a number at it. There was a lot of common man's clothing that actually that actually had a lot of lacing and yeah, I suppose lacing is the correct term. That was at the front of the body, around the sleeves, on the side of the body, and actually quite a lot of places. And the reason for that, or at least one of the reasons for that, is if you do that with your clothing, then you can adjust your clothing to whichever size you happen to be in. For example, pregnant woman now can widen her clothing. Uh, a young man that simply gets more bulk as he's going through his adolescence, into his 30s, whatever, can technically, simply just widen his clothing that way. Or if you lose a bit of weight, you can pull it in again. All of that stuff. Okay, given those times, the we're not going to see the obesity of today back in those days. But you had like your fat seasons and you had your winter seasons and all of that. So it was still worth having. And I figured out it's such a fun little thing that we don't really have that. We don't really have that anymore. I suppose today, yeah, we have a little bit of these, I guess, laces that you can use to tighten a hood on your hoodie or what have you, or a zippers. But at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do with that, right? And yeah, our clothing today, it's really made to be tossed away. Especially, I think, I mean, it varies from race to race, but especially for us, the this is something that, if I'm mistaken, or if someone else disagrees or what have you, then go ahead, I suppose. But what I see in our race in general is you have such a vast range of members of the white race who are naturally, very skinny, um, and then uh, comparing that to some others among us who are like living giants, right? You're like the range of weight alone. Some people are like 150 pounds, and then on the complete other side of that, you have people who go way up into 300 pounds. Now, granted, maybe 300 pounds. That's usually like athletes, and trying not to speak about the people who live unhealthy lifestyles and are bloated and what have you. that is in an entirely different case. I'm trying to look a little bit more at the natural. Um, but yeah, I mean you need clothing that serves the people, right? So there are all these styles and types of stitchings and I suppose amounts of fabric, but that's a bit of a mute point, I guess. That come with that. Plus, you want it to be fashionable. You want it to go with your generation's way, and all of that stuff. So yeah, um, I thought that was a little. Well, maybe that's a little interesting to toss in there. At least I hope it is. It was in my mind when I was listening to you guys, and yeah, we used to be so much more creative with our clothing too. And yeah, it was made to last. It absolutely was made to last and made to be able to be repaired, to be maintained. That is also something that we simply like. How many of us do that anymore? In some of these 4 or 5 stars hotels, they can sometimes they give you a product or what have you. It's like this is for on your clothing and it makes it smell nice, but it also helps the fabric a little and all of that stuff. It's like okay, that's pretty neat, pretty cool. But yeah, most of us don't do that anymore. Wouldn't even think about that something like that even exists. We truly have lost so much. Um, but you do see a clamor among a lot of people to want that back, and that is really good. I'm personally one of these people is like healthy clothing that isn't made from plastic or recycled nonsense or filled to the brim with all of these toxic color pigments, dyes. Yeah, there's something like natural dye, by the way. I looked into this as well a little bit. It's like, for example, uh, you can go as far back as at the very minimum 7th century Scandinavia, and this is like we're speaking here about the fall of the after the fall of the Roman Empire because it was going on there too, right? Where they knew how to extract from that environment certain plant types that by which they could make dye. Yellows, blues, and reds were in there, and when you start thinking about mixing those, you can have a lot more. Uh, I mean, even like I've even read somewhere that something simple as cooking grass can yield you a yellow dye and stuff like that. It's like it's in a certain sense it's all right there for the taking. But it's a matter of the people want to do something with it, experiment with it, and rediscover a lot of this. And yeah, because we do not, yeah, it's being said so often, we do not need to live like this. It can all be healthier. It might take a bit more work, but again, that it all depends on the sort of society we wish to live in, right? There's so many changes that we can make happen to make life more bearable for us. We do not need to accept the current paradigm in any way at all. Uh, yeah, that's that's just a little something that I wanted to share, and I appreciate the time for that. And yeah, it's a very interesting topic, I find.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean regarding the medieval clothing with the laced closures at various parts. And that was indeed very ingenious. It was funny. I think it was maybe last year. I was looking at. I came across a medieval style shirt on Amazon, but it had the tie closure at the neck, but it was completely just cosmetic. It obviously would not do very much to adjust to different men, and of course it came in different sizes. It wasn't one size fits all with tie closures at the neck and then also at the sleeves and such. Um, of course, there are other ways that it can be done, such as taking seams in and out, and that's not too much work, especially for someone who sews every day, as women and many men did back in the day. It was just part of life to, I mean, every day you would be darning or sewing something because you were constantly having to, people worked hard and their clothing, though durable, took a beating. And so it needed, as you said, the Blue Flame, a lot of repair, and it was made to be reparable. And so, yeah, people were always fixing it. There's something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah, regarding dyes. So hopefully this isn't too boring to everyone, but I started going white. Just this is just genetic in my family. My grandmother was fully white by the age of 30 when I was 16. And so I have been dyeing my hair actually since I was 9 because I didn't like it when my blonde hair started to darken as I was very blonde as a child. And so, but I never, I grew up eating organic food and in a very health oriented household, and I didn't want to use chemicals. So I used henna or which basically only can make your hair darker. It just deposits pigment on the outer shaft of the hair. And now that I am basically fully white in the front part of my hair, I have been trying to achieve a cool platinum blonde. That way, when my white hair grows in, it's not so obvious, like the roots, right? But the problem is that henna, which is an orange dye, and looks very much like natural red hair, um, is very difficult to. It sticks very well to the hair. It's very difficult to remove. You can't remove it from the hair without bleaching it. Um, and so I'm looking for ways to just counteract it, like by using indigo or other blue purple shades to counteract the reddish orange shades, the brassy tones. And so in my search, I was looking for pre-made products so I didn't have to go straight to plants and start doing the extraction myself. And I came across a great site, um, a German site that has all these wonderful plants, some of which I'd never heard of, and the range of dyes. And this is just oh, it also had some animal material as well because there are also animal dyes which produce brilliant colors, such as like cochineal red, which comes from an insect, is well known, or maybe that's carmine. Maybe I'm confusing that with carmine, or maybe they're both uh, animal reds, but there are definitely animal shades. There's also, I believe, a snail that produces like a royal purple dye. And I believe that's what part of why it was so expensive and associated with royalty. So there are, yeah, animal dyes as well. And yes, we have known about these for thousands of years. And there's many, many shades. And not people did not wear all just brown or gray clothing. We had lots of colorful clothing for many millennia. Biospirit.
I was wondering about when you mentioned that so many of these businesses had closed in Germany, where you are, the fabric stores, and I was kind of surprised by that because they've always been so prevalent and such. I haven't paid attention here in the United States if the same thing has happened or not. But I was wondering if it has something to do with um, the fact that girls in school used to always be offered homemaking. And so it was a course that and we had in high school, and they would learn how to cook, and they would learn how to sew, and they would learn all the things about making a home. And as far as I don't even know if they offer that in school anymore. And then the other thing about that is so many um, girls are pushed into going to work, and so they're steered more towards what boys and men were steered towards before, which was going into the workforce. And so perhaps there's just not um, there's not an importance put into learning these things anymore, and being passed down from grandmothers and mothers to daughters and granddaughters. Um, I know that in my family, my mom certainly knew how to sew, and my grandmother knew how to sew, and they made just amazing things. And I think I've said before, my mother made her wedding dress, and I could ask my grandmother, I'd say, I really want a tablecloth, and I want it to look like this, and it needs to be this shape and this size, and boom boom, she would make one for me. And so I don't know that perhaps it's becoming a lost art, like so many things now, which I think is rather sad. Like Blue Flame was saying, and Hans, that these things, once they're lost, if we don't pass them on, if there are no more tailors, if there are no more seamstresses, um, then it seems like a very it seems very empty to me. That's a complete line of art and creation that's um, just being left on the wayside.
I definitely think that's part of it. And I was not in high school, in public school, when I was in high school. I was at a private preparatory school, but in the U.S. And that did not teach home ec of anything of any kind. There was zero differences between what the genders were taught. There also was no wood shop or anything like that, which I think is a wonderful thing for the boys. So it was very much focused. It was like college. So it was very much and there were a lot of AP courses. So it was very much focused on academics. We did have a good athletics program, and everyone was required to do a sport, which I thought was really good. And there were a lot of clubs, uh, theater club, art club. There was Asian club, which I actually joined at one point. There's all kinds of things, but there was, I don't think any yeah, there was definitely no crafting clubs, which is interesting, but um, I think probably it was just that those things do take up a lot of time. Um, and of course, it requires a workspace and expensive materials often. And we were not near a city or a place where you'd be able to get materials. So they certainly could have had the money. But they still have the endowment to make facilities. They can have a photography lab, um, and well-funded art gallery and things like that. They could definitely make a wood shop and home ec classes and things like that. So there just isn't the will. It's like you say, they just want to shuffle girls in along the same path as men into the workforce. And I do think a big part of it is not having parents who were very enthusiastic about um, the crafts. Like my mother sewed, and my aunt was a very good seamstress. And so I learned to sew pretty young, but my mother was not like a great cook, which made me want to be which made me start to cook very young because I had to have good food, and she was not providing it. So sometimes these things can turn the other way. If you don't have it, you seek it out on your own. But I think in general you're right that people are either are not being taught at home, and they're also then not being taught in school. But I honestly think the biggest factor with regards to cologne specifically was probably COVID. um, I do think those were factors, but I think COVID was the biggest one because it was really insane. The lockdown here was more hardcore than anywhere else that I've heard of, and yeah, they just weren't able to stay open or get business for years. I mean, it lasted like 3 years. So, uh, yeah, it was a big part of shutting down all the small businesses and all of that. Um, Agenda 2030, anti-white stuff that was going on during that time. The Blue Flame.
Yeah, suddenly I thought about. I remembered something that I heard a few years ago. Is actually uh, that women back in the day, and I think this is predominantly the U.S., but it could extend beyond that. That women would have, let's say, young ladies. They would be looking for a potential husband or what have you, or a boyfriend or something like that, and one of these ways how they would sell themselves, so to speak, like shows like their qualities, that they would go to these fairs in some town, whatever, and they would all sort of they would sit in a circle, line up, whatever, and they would simply be uh, doing some kind of craft, and sewing was one of it. And it wasn't about how good that they could make their clothing or whatever. So, but I guess it plays a little bit in. It's like a guy might be like, "Oh, she can darn me socks." Like that is always nice, I guess. But it was also a display of character. Who of them is patient with their craft, for example. It's like these tiny things, and I really like that because it shows. It also speaks a little about how people back in the day had an eye for these things, more so perhaps than we do today as well. It's like how patient is she? Is she determined? Does she need to like 20 breaks, or can she do it in like one or two goes? Or does she need like one break or what have you? Um, and through that they would show like, this is who you'll have in your house, more or less, right? There is always more that comes with it, but this was an aspect thereof. And yeah, I was just reminded of that while I was thinking about this. Is like it's just and I'm sure like young men would be doing something similar, I guess, whatever that looked like. Never really heard of something as such, but it probably was there too. So you do not only lose a craft that way, you just you lose a way of men and women connecting, in this manner. It's one of the ways. Like rather than this dating culture of today, you actually get to sit down, take your time, and that everyone was together in a sense. It's like you don't have to go to anyone one by one. No, you could just watch like I don't know, could watch like 10 ladies in like the exact same time, just casually observing them while I don't know they're having a drink or a talk or whatever. And then afterwards they might decide, it's like, okay, we've seen him do that. I'm gonna introduce myself to that one and that one and that one because they look like something that I find appealing or what have you. And you go forward from there over the span of how long, whatever long courting used to take back then, right? Um, oh, just a second. Oh, pardon about that. There's also another famous figure, and her name escapes me right now. But she is very famous for sewing, and maybe it was by herself. I'm not 100% on that. On sewing a flag in the U.S. Uh, Mrs. Ross, could that be her name, or Rose? So, I could be totally wrong.
Betsy Ross.
Ah, there you go. It's like I was reminded of her. It's like, there's one lady out there who kind of you could say is a very beautiful portrayal of that in a sense. It wasn't for that she made that flag, but it kind of plays into the topic, right? So got another famous West woman, right? And yeah, That's just what I wanted to add to that too.
I hadn't heard of that, but it makes me think of how young ladies of means, so the upper class, used to be trained in basically how to impress uh, future husbands and how to be good hostesses, right? So they played multiple instruments, they sang, they did embroidery, they painted. They basically had a type of fine arts education, and I think that was a beautiful part of our history. It's something that I wish that we still had, and I think it serves the same purpose in showing men who are observing these women, uh, because that's exactly how it happened. There would be a dinner party or whatever type of a social event, and after the dinner, um, the ladies would be asked to put on a performance or show off their handiworks, and yeah, you would get to observe a lot about a woman in that moment, her personality and all of those traits. So yeah, I agree, but I also like this idea of not just, although I really like the idea of meeting in the home, because it brings back what I feel is our natural biospiritual expression when it comes to mating, which is actually a type of arranged marriage where the whole family and friends, like the entire community, helps young people get together. Like they're all involved in the matchmaking and i- ensuring that people who might be compatible or just people of a similar age in a general area meet. Um, and it's so women get to choose from the men that their families present to them or bring to them, or sometimes the family brings them to men who are potential candidates. And I think that's an ideal way to go about finding a partner for as a woman. I truly do think, um, because generally people care greatly for their children. No one is going to care more for you more than your own family. So having them, and they're going to be able to see things about, especially being older and being a different sex in the case of the men, and being having different personalities. They're going to be able to observe different things in these men than the young woman who is choosing would be able to. And so you get all these different opinions, and they can truly properly vet everyone, and yet the woman still gets to feel like she is choosing, and she is still choosing, but from a pre-selected group. So yeah, any way that we can make that happen, I think is wonderful. So I like the idea of it happening at at any type of place, whether it's a market where people are showing their wares, or even performing, or if it's in a meeting place like a restaurant or a cafe or something like that. It would be nice. We used to have a little bit of that, like poetry hours and live music nights and things like that. Would be nice to have more of that. But bring in the community involvement, and I guess I don't know how we could really do that without going back to smaller communities, or without doing something maybe like what Arvel has discussed, which is creating white community centers. So that could be maybe the evolution, where we go to find spouses and friends, where we go to meet other people who share our interests and our goals and values. The Blue Flame.
As such meetings go, I mean, it varies on what each family wants to do, right? But coming together in such ways, I think the biggest part of it is just getting off the internet for a while at the end of the day. And we need to stop, well, this is maybe a bit too much of a deviation from the initial topic, so stop me, I guess, if it gets in the way of things. What I wanted to mention is that for our people to come together in such manners, could it's fairly simple in a way. You just need to you get young folk to say it's like, you know, that they leave their phone in the cupboard or whatever for a full day or whatever, 2 days or or something. They don't take it with them. None of that. You just leave it aside, and in that manner that they, have their head free from all of that stuff. Um, and as far as going to going to places, I mean, how did they do it in the past? It's nothing more than organizing a market, and then these ladies would have their own little corner where they, well, I mean, it's not like they're shoved in a corner somewhere. They're still pretty much visible. But why would that be impossible today? You can do it on holidays. You can do it during religious celebrations. Doesn't even matter which religion that you pursue. You can do it. I mean, for a, I don't know, like a birthday party, and you decide, well, for the ladies, or the boys, give them something to do, to watch. Uh, yeah, like this coming together of that nature, you just marry it to what already more or less exists, and then you simply act on it, I would say. And yeah, I guess it couldn't be. It seems pretty straightforward and simple to me. You just make sure that the environment is safe, because anti-whites will go there to inflict harm on us, to disturb affairs and what have you. But aside from that, I think it's all totally doable and fairly simple. You just need to get people to stop messing around and, yeah, pull their heads out of the internet for like a day, and just go have some fun, get some fresh air, talk to some people. With this as a little extra for those who are looking for someone, for a boy or a girl. And yeah, I I wouldn't worry too much about like any real organization being required for that. Beyond, you want to set up a farmers market, well, you're going to need your farmers to come together to apply their trade. You have a nice little corner there, and then I don't know, you invite like a band or two who can come play something in the meantime, so then you have a bit of entertainment, make it fun. And who's going to show up is going to show up, and who isn't. Rome isn't built in a day. Maybe it'll take a few years for people to, get into the habit of it. But, that is again a matter of, does the community want it enough? And yeah, it seems pretty straightforward in my opinion, but that's me. It shouldn't be too hard.
Okay. I think I disagree. I think that it's going to be a bit of a struggle to compete with screens, because people aren't just going to put away their phones just because we think it's a good idea, right? They need an incentive, and so we need to create places and events which are more enticing than what's available on the screen. And I do think that there is an increasing appetite for that type of thing. As we've discussed before, people are more and more seeking authenticity, because there's so much fakery going on, especially on what's on screens. And of course, there's all the anti-whiteism that's being pushed, and which uh, people from all races are having increasingly less tolerance for. So I don't think it would be too hard, but I do think it would require a little bit of effort to make it viral. A few days ago, I saw someone here in Cologne, a white man, playing violin, and that was the first time I'd seen someone playing an instrument in maybe like 10 years, which is kind of outrageous, right? Because I used to remember back in the day, like when I lived in Manhattan briefly, that I would see that quite often, busking of various types. Uh, but I think this was actually, yeah, the first time maybe that I'd seen it in Germany, or at least the second time, if not the first. And but what I didn't like is he was playing Beethoven's Ninth, and he was playing. He had like some sort of a speaker, so that he was like playing along with the orchestra while playing the violin part, and I did not like that. I just wanted that, to me, kind of ruined it. But maybe I'm too much of a musical snob. But going back to what you're saying, Biospirit, I think we need to make it something really exciting and viral. But you're right that people just need to do it, and then people will come. So someone could go out and just start playing, like this guy with the violin did. But it could be a woman who shows off things that she's at a market that she sold. One thing, a place that this could be done at, that I immediately thought of, was Christmas markets, which are very big here in Germany. Um, so something like that could work. But then I also had a thought of, well, how would men know to go approach her? Because it seems like men don't approach women very much anymore. And um, yeah, like I would almost be tempted for there to be a sign like, looking for a good husband. I want to get married and have babies. Like, I almost feel like that needs to be there, because our men are so concerned about um, women who have been infected by anti-whiteism and who are not going to be trustworthy mothers and wives. So, yeah, let's go over to Hans.
So about 2 years ago, my family, um, arranged to get together with another family that we grew up together with. So we are 6 siblings, they are 6 siblings. So together with the spouses, you're already looking at 20 plus adults. Now, the sad thing is, each one of us have 1 or 2 children. So we went down from 6 to 2, every one of those adults. But so we were enjoying ourselves, and then something's bothering me. I can't put my finger on it, and then I realized I'm not hearing the teens. And when teens go silent, usually they are up to no good. So I got up. I'm now searching on a search and destroy mission. I find a room. All the teens are in the room with their faces in their cell phones. So these days, when teens go silent, it means their eyes are glued to their screens.
Oh God. I was not expecting that ending, but that's very depressing, but not at all surprising. Yeah. But it's interesting that they felt they had to go away, and they wanted to hang out, and yet still be all on their phones. So there's something in there. They were still wanted that community, which is why they all gathered together to be on their phones, even if they weren't interacting with each other. And then they also felt some sort of shame in being on their phones, which is why they went away to do that. So that's interesting. Biosphere.
Yeah, I was remembering when I was, I don't know, maybe around 10 or 11 years old, and went to visit my best friend in Michigan at his grandparents' house in the northern peninsula of Michigan. And they had a summer house on the lake up there, and we were there for 2 or 3 weeks. And one of the things that we went to was it was a weekend, and at all of these little towns up there, and one of these little towns was having a like a community dance, and so we went, and um, there was like a table that had some food, and then there was someone who was um, directing the dancing, and this was like old fashioned dancing, like doing um, the Virginia reel. So uh, with that kind of dancing, it's very interactive, and you have direction. So the person who's leading the dance is telling you what the next move is that you're supposed to do, and there's generally people who are dancing who know already how the dance goes. So you can look at other people and you can hear what the directions are, and you just kind of follow along, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm not sure if anybody really ever does this anymore. Even when I was in high school, we had a section of PE that was um, country line dancing, and learning how to do these types of interactive dancing. And to me, that's one of the things that's really lost with the especially what they call the rap music these days, which I just find it just hurts my ears and my head. And there's no um, there's nothing about it that is of our people. And even um, even just dancing to rock music, it's not the same. There's no intricacy to it. There's no particularness to how you have to move, and paying attention to the other people that you are around. And so if we haven't already lost the ability to pass these types of dances down, I think those are great ways for people to meet. And at that dance that I was talking about in Michigan, there were people of all ages, and so it was there were children all the way up to adults um, who were in doing the different dancing. So anyway, just an idea was going through my mind.
I have always been enamored with those group dances. I learned a few when I was in the Waldorf school in Switzerland. And funnily enough, my aunt, whom I mentioned earlier, who is was she died earlier this year, bless her. But she lived a nice long life and had four children, and let's see, yes, even more grandchildren. So good life for her. Um, she was part of a like reenactment society where they sewed period accurate dresses and danced period accurate dances. So, and they did the type of group dancing you're talking about. And I believe it was mostly older women. So I don't know how, I suspect it's dying out, but I always thought that was really cool. And actually, I wanted to get someone like that to teach just one group dance at my wedding. And I wanted that to be the dancing portion of my wedding. But my mother was very opposed to it, and she was the primary backer of my financial backer of my wedding. And so, yeah, so she was like, no, 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 I think that's very offensive to have someone teach people how to dance. And I didn't want just like regular dancing. I think that's very uninspired. I wanted something. Also, I had like a 19th century style wedding, so it was in a 19th century building. Um, the my outfit was 19th century inspired, like Victorian inspired, and so it was um, my husband's, and so yeah, I wanted it to be fitting with the theme of the wedding. But yeah, she did not like that idea, so it didn't happen. That's a shame. But yeah, I agree. If we could bring something like that back, it would be really fun. The brief part did group dancing that I did in the Waldorf school was, like you said, extremely fun. All the footage I've seen of that type of thing, everyone is just having a blast. I too did a little bit of, I think we called it square dancing, when I was briefly in a public school in fifth grade in Massachusetts. So, but I think that I might be dying out as well. I'm not sure. And even if it isn't, it's not the full expression of our biospirit, and we should be having more types of dances and and more intricate dancing from multiple different countries to multiple different kinds of music. We should be really experiencing the full breadth of that. So that's what I would like to see. Great point made there. Over to Hans.
So one of my sisters, she did a, a something that I haven't seen before or since. So and they didn't announce it. We were sitting at the tables, and it was now time for the speeches. And then a ballerina danced between the tables. It was so unexpected. I'm not lying. People were slack-jawed. I stared at this thing because it's so unexpected. There's a suddenly you're inside a ballet. But the other thing I wanted to say was we had the most fun that I ever had on a dance floor just a few months ago when I visited my school. I don't know if it's a dance, but it works. The women, you put your hands on your hips, so your elbows make angles, and then you grab the other one through the elbow. Then you're linked, and then you spin around, but you put torque in it. And then when you see another open elbow, you release the woman, and then you go to the other one. And it's this chaotic, high energy in body simulation that you're doing in real time. And one time um, to avoid tripping someone, I did a dive roll on the floor, and I just jumped up and just got back into it. It was the most fun, I'm telling you. I'm looking forward to the next time we get together.
I have seen that type of dancing. I don't know what that's called, but that definitely counts as a type of dancing, and I've definitely seen that before, in I think a movie or a show or something like that. And it looks like so much fun. There's something as well about dancing which I think is particularly well suited to finding a partner because it allows uh, for a variety of things. First of all, you get it's I think that, and there is research supporting this, that pheromones are extremely important to finding our spouse. And unfortunately, today a lot of people overwash, or more frequently they heavily use perfumes and colognes, which are typically synthetic. I personally despise these. I find them very strong. And when you have someone walk past you on the street, and it's like a 4 foot radius or more of that artificial synthetic fragrance, and gives you a headache. It's like walking through the perfume section of a department store, that type of thing. So, but even things just like detergents and scented soaps, all of these things cover up our natural pheromones. And these are really important because they express our immune system genes, and those are important for genetic compatibility. So in order for us to have the healthiest children, we need to be able to select women need to be able to select men who smell really good for them. to them. So and then they are more fertile with those men. Um, so it really is quite essential, and you have to, of course, get somewhat close to someone, and especially so if they're wearing synthetic fragrance on top to be able to smell them. Although I think that there's a lot of subtle stuff that I think a lot of time people are detecting pheromones, even in platonic relationships, and they're not aware of it, and it affects the relationship, or the fact that in a relationship doesn't start, i.e. they immediately are like, I don't like that person, and it's because of the way the person, it's their pheromones. They're really not genetically compatible, even on a platonic level. They're just too different, and the subconscious senses that and says, nope, um, I'm not going to engage with this person. And a lot of people are not very self-aware, right? They're not. They spend a lot of time in their subconscious. That is particularly true of women. So I suspect this goes on a lot. But the other aspect of dancing is that you get to. It's very sexy when a man dances well. There's something which I call body confidence, which is a man's, it's what it sounds like, body confidence, the way that he feels at home in his body and how he expresses that. And I think it harkens to like the to, of course, sex itself, but also the fact that he would be able to protect us if we were attacked or if our family was attacked, because he's obviously someone who uh, works out regularly and, as I said, is at home in his body and knows how to use it. And there's a when you're dancing with someone, not so much the modern type of dancing where you're not touching, or let's not even discuss the horrible, like, twerking against people type modern club dancing, but certainly ballroom dancing or these group dances, you really got to flirt with someone in a way that was not perverse, and yet still allowed the young couple to flirt, and also for the man to engage. Do I like this? Is this woman graceful to me? Do I find her mannerisms appealing? And I think it's really sad that um, we don't really have that anymore, and that also has contributed to our lower rates of marriage and later rates of marriage and fewer children and all of that. Ardent, come on in.
Hi, everybody. You had mentioned scent, Julia, and talking about how a lot of people either overwash or mask their scents. One of the things that I think a lot of young men are not really being taught well is the importance of, yes, you can apply a scent to yourself, but it's how you do it, the subtlety that's involved, the amount is one of those things that I don't think a lot of men are really taught to do, especially younger men, especially partly because you have body washes like, I mean, Axe, or Europe, I think it's called Lynx, and this is notoriously fumy. Uh, these things, I mean, you walk into a bathroom after someone has showered, and it can be an hour. Well, I have a very sharp sense of smell as well, but even an hour after someone has bathed, and it's forgive the slightly crass expression, but it's like walking into a whorehouse. It's such a strong scent. Excuse me. But I think part of the big issue is, yeah, people are not taught that scent is important in attraction, for one. Young men are not taught that subtlety is important. And the other thing you mentioned, this body confidence, the way that someone moves, the way I would describe it is and it's true for females as well. It's how much someone owns themselves, how much self possession they have. So I think that was. Oh, the other thing I wanted to speak about was practical learning in schools. When I was in school, we were not really given a choice between, so much as the year was broken up into 2 different semesters, and one semester would be home economics and the second semester would be a shop class. And it wasn't really, I guess at the time, because this would have been the late 80s into the early 90s, in that era, the feminist push was coming along, but there was still the, okay, look, you still need to learn practical skills to be a man sort of idea. So there was the compromise of, okay, if the kids want to do it, then we'll put everybody in home ec for half the year and everybody in shop class for half the year. And of course, a lot of the guys, me included, we didn't do real well with the seamstressy stuff, not having particularly delicate hands. But by the same token, the girls didn't do really well in wood shop, for example, partly because, and I saw this myself, they were extremely intimidated by the very loud, very noisy, very dangerous power tools. And so it that was one of the things that really kind of crystallized the gender differences for me. And it's kind of funny that I grew up in that time where, while television was telling me that all the races were exactly the same, my life experience was showing me how very different the genders were. So then when this sort of as time went on and everything started to try to be universalized, everybody was supposed to be, one of my friends uses the term globo homo, uh, everyone homogenized sort of deal, then I was kind of pre-insulated against that, which is part of the reason why I like the go free method, uh, because I see the utility of it for people who never lived through that experience that I had, and for people who didn't have the same sort of perceptions that I do. So, uh, I mean, Jason absolutely gave us a gift with that book. Um, Other than that, I think I'm good, and I actually have to run and get supper. So, thanks everybody. I hope you're doing well.
Well, thank you for sharing. It's always I love to always hear men who do have a strong sense of smell. The main thing regarding that is that most of the research on pheromones in humans has been done on women with regards to women detecting men's pheromones. And they have just haven't done any research really on men detecting women's pheromones. But there are men who have very good senses of smell and who claim to be able to detect pheromones. And very recent research has confirmed this, that men can also detect pheromones. We just don't know to the extent. It's still very new, and there isn't enough interest in it, which is really a shame. I would say it's probably linked to this whole um, denial of realism, reality that we live in right now, right? So we deny race, which is a denial of genetics. We deny sex. Again, that's also denial of genetics. So, of course, we're going to deny other things that are connected to DNA, like pheromones. So I think it's an extension of that. It's so interesting that you were forced into that situation where you had to do shop, both the boys and the girls had to do both. It was split by gender so I just did home ec and the boys did shop. And well, I think I would have liked shop well enough. And home ec was like for beginners, and I was like already at least an intermediate in sewing and an expert in cooking. So I was like, this is like boring and slow. But I don't know. I might have enjoyed woodshop more just for the challenge. But yeah, the machines are intimidating, and so I can understand the girls. I think we would all do from benefit from some more gender segregation as we used to have, as I think is a true expression of our biospirit. Hans.
Now, the fact that you mentioned smell, um, it made it. I remembered last year. So I'm part of a cultural movement that formed out of one of the right-wing political parties that broke up because there's no point anymore in participating in elections. And so this cultural movement varies between conservative and very conservative. And specifically, the farm girls don't use deodorant. So last year when we had folk dancing, after a while I could smell them. But it's true, was not unpleasant at all, you know. So it is interesting um, that I mean, if you don't wash, then the sweat starts to stink, you know. But fresh fresh sweat doesn't stink. It just smells. Yeah, it was interesting. But a lot of our folk dances, not a lot. There's a couple of folk dances that is a lot of fun. And what's fun for me is um, when you um, generate a lot of acceleration, then it's exhilarating. It's like being on ice skates. If you can generate torque, and it was interesting that the heavier women were more fun because you know, you can put more weight into the moves.
Well, as a 100-pound woman, I will respond to that by saying there's swing dancing and it's ballet, and it's a lot more fun to lift a light woman in the air than a heavy one. So, yes, well, there's dances for the heavy women and there's dances for the lighter women, and we can both benefit from them as whether we are heavy or not. Let me just welcome the listeners. I haven't done that. So, welcome to the Tree Godfather, Triple A, Janitor of No White Guilt, New Hampshire Patriot, Cool Papa J Magic, Matthew McCann, Cardia Nebula, Jerome V, Stop by Anti-Whiteism, The Nameless One, Robert, Benjamin, and Arrests, or It Doesn't Matter. So thank you for listening. If there's other people I've missed, I'm sorry I can't see you, even though there's an arrow I can click on. But thank you for listening. And if you want to grab a mic, feel free to request one, and I will give you one. I'm also going to read some comments here. Hans has posted about a shirt. It's also up in the Jumbotron that is 20 years old. And as you can see, it is in very good quality and with no broken buttons or seams unraveling. They don't make them like this anymore. Amen to that. And it's Versace. Very, very classy. I like that. It almost looks like there's silver threads woven through this like dark green. Very nice shirt there, Hans. Arden Party says, men pheromone detection. We absolutely can, and we are affected by them. Some guys will get crazy around a women's menses, etc. And he adds, "Oh, I love the home ec stuff because I love cooking. Just can't sew to save my life." Yes, it's interesting. The best chefs in the world are men. Um, and I feel a little competitive over that because I'm a competitive type, and cooking has always been one of it was my first passion. And yeah, so I would like to compete against those men, but they would probably beat me, and that's right. So, um, let's see if there's anything else. A cool Papa J Magic says, "My daughter and her best friend are going to set up at the fall craft fair this year. I just spent a bunch of money I don't really have buying the supplies they need, but I'm really glad to see them so excited about it. They spent this last weekend making some very cute stuff." That is wonderful to hear. It sounds like money well spent, and I hope that they recoup what you've spent, and maybe they will. Maybe they'll make great gains and find husbands. Who knows? And Robert says, "Hello, everyone, for white well-being," as he usually does. We like to see that. Thank you, Robert. Benjamin says, "The cost of fabric itself in my area is often much higher than the cost of complete pieces of clothing made abroad." Huh. That's interesting. I would like to know where you are. I'm going to click and see. It says you're in Quebec. That's interesting because here, it depends on the fabric. So cheap, thin cotton fabric is quite cheap, and of course polyester and stuff like that is very cheap. Viscose is also usually quite cheap, but nice woolens. So I bought a bunch of nice woolens when I was in the fabric shops here in Cologne before they went away. Pure woolens, really nice thick ones, like the type you would make a jacket from, or like a really nice thick wool skirt. And yeah, those were definitely. I, I spent, I think, over like €100 just for the fabric to make a skirt. So yes, that can be the case. Um, but I'm curious, Benjamin, if you want to add more to your comment there, if you're talking about what type of fabrics you're talking about exactly, and if anyone else has noticed a change in fabric costs, I would be curious to hear that because it seems to me like it's just they're getting the options are getting less. But I was looking online at fabric prices and I was surprised by the variety online. So it seems like a lot of, and this makes sense given COVID and everything, and just the general way of the world with so much going online, that uh, there is a lot of different type of fabrics available. Um, Maybe even probably more than ever before. It's just you have to find it, and some of it is expensive, but a lot of it is quite reasonably priced. So maybe it's just regional. Um, I was looking on Etsy, and I think the default is that it's set to show me stuff in Germany, but I did see some stuff in the U.S. and that wasn't too bad. But we might also have different ideas of what's expensive. For the fabric that I just bought some fabric recently for a custom corset that I'm having made by a custom corset maker, and I couldn't find the type of fabric that I wanted here in Cologne. So I had the thought to go look in a department store at the bedding selection, and there I was able to find a really nice cotton sateen, which is a nice tight woven cotton fabric, all cotton, that has like a slight sheen to it, which is why it's called sateen. And um, it's quite durable, and also it has a really nice feel and look. And I was able to find exactly the color I wanted. So, and it was even on like double sale. So it was like originally like €100, and I got it for like under €25. So I got very lucky and made out there. Um, so let's move on to another subject. I added something to the jumbotron. It looks like it's in the middle, and this is about the Sandy Hook shooter. And apparently he was a activist antinatalist, and he was also what is called an ethicist. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. And that is life spelled backwards. And, now antinatalists are people who want uh, people to stop having children, right? So they're against people having birth. And they're almost all white. But then there's something that's even more evil than antinatalism. They're very anti-human, of course. They think humans are the source. They think life is suffering. They think humans are the source, and experiences of the greatest suffering, because we have the greatest capacity for experience, having uh, limbic systems and frontal lobes and all of that. Um, and Ethylism is an even more extreme version where they want life completely eradicated. Like if they were in charge, they would entirely disintegrate Earth and eradicate it completely, so that nothing would ever suffer again. And the reason that I brought this up is because I think and especially the fact that all the antinatalists and ethilists that I have seen are white, And they're usually also extremely unattractive white people who have, well, they're, the leftist types, or particularly anti-white types. So they have the green hair. Um, they tend to be very overweight. They don't groom themselves very well. Sometimes you can't tell what gender they are, this type of thing. They're very, very deeply infected by anti-whiteism. And I think there's a real tie here between antinatalism and effilism and anti-whiteism, because, of course, it gets to the heart of anti-whiteism, which is this the anti-white narrative, in which whites are this evil seed, right? And we are the source of all evil. And so, of course, it would be white people who are affected by this messaging in such a negative manner who would spearhead these types of movements and want to eradicate life. Biospirit.
Yeah, I was just going to say this sounds right out of the anti-white narrative, and um, just smacks of the jealousy and envy that anti-whites have towards the beauty and accomplishments of Western kind. So, of course, they would come up with something like this where they just want to annihilate anything and everything that offends them, right? So, doesn't surprise me. It's rather disgusting that these things are peddled to our people. But there you go. That's anti-whiteism on steroids right there.
Yeah, it really is, and it goes to show that the end result of anti-whiteism uh, leads to just the worst things ever, right? It leads to the death of our people, white erasure, the death of our own people wanting to kill themselves, and then not even just that, destroy all life. Um, what could be more evil than that? So it really is the greatest evil of our time. Hans.
I think you, I think it would be quite easy to expose these people because you can you can present them with a hypothetical. So you want all humans to disappear, but what about that African village where the idea of breakfast is you get up in the morning, walk out of your hut, and the first banana that hits you in your face is the thing that you eat? They will immediately say, no, no, we can't kill them.
So, I have not personally spoken to antinatalists, but I have seen some debates between pronatalists and antinatalists, because I found out about this whole movement via Simone and Malcolm Collins, who are big pronatalists. And so they have covered some of this stuff. And yeah, no, I know exactly how they would respond, because they would just say, "Oh, but they're poor, and that's suffering, and no one should have to endure a moment of suffering, and they don't get to live the life of white privilege that we privileged whites do, and that's even more suffering. Uh, they should. Some of them might be barefoot. That's more suffering." These people are so insane that they um, have literally made declarations like, um, it would be better to kill all humans and replace them with shrimp, or like sea. What are those things called that you can uh, like have at home? Like sea monkeys, but they're not sea monkeys. They're like sea monkeys. Um, Anyway, they literally want to replace humans with like feeders, essentially sea life bottom feeders, because those things have fewer sensory organs, and thus as a result experience less suffering. But then they run into the issue of, well, there's more of them, and so even though they feel less suffering, there's so many of them that maybe their collective suffering still equals all the human suffering. But they go into these wild crazy ideas. Hans.
So now I need to be careful how I ask this question, but given the position on life, does the question come up to why are they not living what they are preaching?
It does, yes. Of course. That's what Malcolm always says. He says, you go first. If this is what you're preaching, yeah, why aren't you leading the way and ending your own life or unaliving yourself, as they call it these days? Um, and yeah, the idea is, of course, that their activism is more important. Is I think one comeback. It's more important that they fight to end everyone's suffering. I think another comeback that I have heard is that the act of dying itself is suffering, and they don't have access to uh, a form of death that is suitably um, free of suffering. Um, so this is why a lot of them, the ethalists, they want like a instant like nuclear destruction of the whole earth, so that everyone's just vaporized and there's no time to feel anything. That's what they fantasize about, which is truly, truly evil. Hans.
Well, I think this qualifies as terrorism. This is because they, I mean, how can it be anything less? Surely this qualifies as domestic terrorism because what they want is for everyone to die.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a terrorizing um, idea, concept, um, ideology, whatever you want to call it. But as far as I know, none of them have ever done anything violent. So they're just making their opinion known. And of course, they're American. So it's just freedom of speech. And it's just their opinion that it would be great if, a meteor or whatever miraculously, an asteroid miraculously ended all life. Hans.
Well, I would say at the very least, it counts as dehumanization, but also incitement of violence, because anyone who is a little bit unstable, who listens to their message, will act on it. And he will take his car and he will drive over someone who is riding a bicycle. So this is absolutely, I think we can shut them down pretty easily by just highlighting the fact that they are inciting violence and they are no different to terrorism, to terrorists.
Yeah, at the very least, there is an implicit, at the very least, uh, incitement of violence. And I mean, I think this example of the Sandy Hook shooter is a good case, right? Because this is the type of thing that he was reading about and himself very actively posting about. How, like, he had a whole manifesto, and it led him to um, kill 26 children and teachers. And something about killing children to me just seems so particularly vile, but it fits very well with someone who uh, who's an antinatalist, right? Because get them before they can even go through puberty and um, even have a chance to procreate. So, uh, yeah, it leads to, it definitely leads to terrorism. Who knows how many more um, events like this, shooting events, or um, n- and not just by whites, maybe by other, but just by other anti-whites, have occurred that have also been affected by this type of antinatalist uh, preaching. Because if you go like on Reddit, there's a whole antinatalist forum, and I think it has at least 200,000 subscribers, which is pretty insane to think about. Maybe it's 300,000, but it's a pretty large number, if I recall correctly. I believe it's says in the thread how many there are. See if I can look that up real quick. Yeah, 232,000 members on Reddit. So that's a lot of people, and there could be a lot more people who just browse, right? And they're not even officially showing as members. Okay, so I didn't see who was first, but I'm gonna throw it over to Biospirit.
Yeah, the thing I was thinking of when guys were just talking about that is the whole trans movement is so similar to this, where they're basically being talked into destroying their ability to reproduce and having it sold to them as nirvana. This is the same kind of thing, don't reproduce, and by doing that you're a good person, that this kind of stuff. And who is it primarily directed at? It's primarily directed at white people. So again, it's just another one of those evil subsets of anti-whiteism that we see in every nook and cranny.
100%. It is the worst thing that I could think of. Truly, this mentality, especially ethylism, of course, which is a lot more violent-minded. Hans.
I agree with Biospirit, but it's easy from our perspective if we focus on white well-being, and that is, if you want to kill white people, you are anti-white. It doesn't matter if you say, no, I want to kill everyone. You still agree that you want to kill white people. So from our perspective, you're anti-white, and that's evil. So and if they want to go and get into that conversation, that's where we want the conversation to be focused on us. So yes, I agree with Biospirit. They are anti-white, and let him try to defend that, because that's a win for us if they do it.
That's a great point, and thank you for always bringing it back to us and our victimization. It's something that we should certainly try doing. Anyone who still has a Reddit account, I am banned, so I can't go on Reddit. But if anyone isn't banned and wants to try going on Reddit, there's also antinatalists on YouTube, and try swashing there. I can try swashing on YouTube, of course. Yeah, I think using the Go Free lexicon and dialectic is a great suggestion. And we might be able to, as you say, wake them up, or at least wake up some of the people who are following them and interested in, or just dipping their toes in, the lurkers and such. And of course, you can also bring it back to white people by just saying that antinatalism and epilism is only pushed in white countries. There are no non-white antinatalists or ethilists that I've ever heard of. And this is not being pushed in non-white countries. It's like mass immigration. It's only happening in white countries, and so that alone shows that it's very much anti-white. Over to Hans.
Well, it's similar to LGBT, which is an attack on the white nuclear family. But I wanted to ask you, because from my perspective, our audience, our target audience is the segment of the white population that has a positive white identity. And I I don't know if there are any of them on Reddit, because Reddit even banned the Donald Reddit subreddit, which is a MAGA. I mean, they banned MAGA groups. So, are there any people on Reddit that have a positive white identity?
It's been, let's see, when was I banned? So I hadn't hadn't been on Reddit really for, I was there briefly in like 2000 five or something like that for like a few months or maybe a year, and then I dropped off. But I was last active with a new account in I think it was last year sometime, probably like a year and a half ago. And there were at that time still some white positive people. There was a group that I was in, a subreddit that was that I really liked, which was red pilled women or something like that. And it was all about women who are opposed feminism and other forms of anti-whiteism, which target our women and try to lead them away from becoming wives and mothers. And it was full of great advice of women saying, how do I stop being a boss babe? How do I um, allow my husband to lead? Um, Things like that. It, but maybe because it was just women talking amongst ourselves for the most part. Um, I think men were not even allowed to post in that subreddit, if I recall correctly. Um, but then there were the co-ed, like red pill subreddit, I think had been essentially banned, and there was still like a men's red pill one um, that seemed pretty good as well, although it had, of course, some anti-white sentiments like, all women are evil, and this type of thing that you typically see in the manosphere. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess things can change quite quickly, and it's in a year and a half or so. And it makes sense that Reddit would sort of double down in response to the Overton window shifting with um, with Trump's election, and just people in general getting fed up with anti-whiteism. So yeah, maybe Reddit isn't the place, but I would suspect that Reddit has so many different subreddits, and this is one of the reasons that I have, for a few years now, been wanting to make a um, competitor like a mega forum competitor to Reddit, which apparently is very difficult to do, and the feds will come to your door if you do. So, yeah, maybe I won't do that. But there's a lot of people who go there for things that are completely apolitical, like fiber arts discussion. Like there's huge fiber arts subreddits. There's huge discussions on hair, on plastic surgery, on pregnancy, like on breastfeeding, like lots of things which are not too far away from weight positive identity. So, and I think a lot of young people, like, the Reddit is also highly boosted in the search engine. So when you search for any type of advice, things come up from Reddit. And yeah, I think this is kind of dying out a little bit with the advent of things like Grok and other AI, and people are just going to AI instead. But AI then just goes and scrapes Reddit. So um, I do think there are still people on there who can be reached. I was talking to a girl when I was on there briefly. A 14-year-old girl was talking to me. She wanted to be a chemist, which is why she sought me out, because I'm a chemist, and she was interested in what my what it was like in going through the whole process. And um, yet she was very deeply infected with anti-whiteism, and yet I could also see that she was open to, um, and I was very gentle with her, but she was open to discussing, to looking at things from different perspectives, and maybe I had not read Go Free yet at that time, but I was still fighting in my own way, and yeah, I think there are a lot of young people we could read on there personally. Biospirit.
Um, one of the things that we found in when we were doing um, the outreach team in its prior edition was when we would try to swash on platforms that were predominantly anti-white. The majority of the people on that platform are anti-white. Um, that then the platform itself tends to be hostile towards us because when we say anything that is outside of the anti-white narrative, the anti-whites on that platform then immediately jump on us like piranha and report us and get our accounts banned and get us shut down. For instance, I was remembering when we used to do ABC used to have a comment section for their online articles, and we would go in and it was kind of like to hone our skills to um, go up against some of these lunatics on there, and so we would last. It was not even a day. It was in the matter of hours before we got a strike, and then our account was either banned or our comments were removed or whatever, because these anti-whites cannot handle any type of contradiction to their narrative, which is the anti-white narrative. And so we found that it really was not worth our time and effort to go into these types of environments. As much as I agree with what you're saying, that there are vagues that wander into that environment, but because the playing field is not level, that we get knocked out and kicked out of the discourse. They're not going to let our stuff show up on search things, and so that's just my 2 cents worth. We've kind of been down that path with the outreach team before, and that's why we stick to the places that we tend to stick to. That's not saying that if anybody wants to give it a go, by all means give it a go if that's something that you want to do. It's just be forewarned that those types of platforms are extremely hostile to our message.
I mean, now that I have a new phone and a new IP, maybe I'll try briefly and just see if the attitude has shifted at all. Um, because things are shifting. So maybe things have changed a little bit, but I would not be surprised if you were right. I can certainly understand that. Uh, yeah, like the moment you, like as you say, you step outside the narrative and you even use a term like anti-white, they're like, "What is this nonsense?" And they just ban you. Yeah, I can absolutely see that happening. I mean, I got banned for criticizing a mod for um criticizing other people. They were just mods who were just being nasty and mean and just being like for no good reason. And that's what I got banned for. It's nothing political. I was just like, this is not common courtesy. Can we behave like civil people? And that's what they banned me for. Um, I was I basically called them like petty. I said that they were being petty, power hungry, um, abusers of power or something like that, and yeah, they didn't like that. Hans.
I remember that period because it was ABC News and The Hill. We went on their forums, and what I did was, because there's a 2-day pre-moderation grace period where you put a comment in support or a neutral comment, and then you wait 2 days. And then what happens is your comment does not automatically get flagged for moderation. So you pass the first gate. That didn't help. I had about my accounts, because I had a handful of accounts they went like popcorn. And what you did was you saw your account getting banned from that forum. And then what you do the next time is you are less critical. But there was just no level of criticism that could pass and still be beneficial. So there was just no point, because the moment where you cross the threshold into the territory where people will start to question the anti-white narrative, then it was just, you're gone. And it was like By Spirit said, they were like piranhas. Um, and then when next time you see, then you can't comment or you can't like, and and then you go to the next account. So yes, I burnt a few accounts like that, and then we decided this is. And the other thing is, I cannot describe to you the disgust you feel at the level of discourse in those forums. People are like that guy yesterday who came in here and said race is a social construct. It's such a stupid thing to say. You can't imagine that there are real people like that. But on those forums, everyone is like that.
Yeah, I'm again not too surprised to hear that, but it's still horrifying. But it does go to show how powerful the go free approach is, because even the slightest use of it gets us kicked out, right? So that shows that it is really the only way to get to people. If it is uh, the thing that is most easily criticized, right? It's the thing that is working. So, uh, Hans?
No, it's not working, because the Go Free is designed to not to pass censorship, because we focus on the well-being of white people. But when the anti-whiteism reach such a level as it is in forums like The Hill and ABC News, then all they need to do is identify you as someone who cares about white well-being. That's all, and then you're gone. So Go Free works for our target audience, which is white people with a positive white identity who are infected with a anti-white meme pathogen that um, our well-being is linked to the detriment of other races, which is why they won't defend us. So those people are our target audience, and Go Free works very well there. But anti-whites have a radar. They have a radar for picking up when you care about white people, and you can't hide from that. And those forums are such that they are just plain evil, plain anti-white. So nothing will work on them except being anti-white, which is what we are definitely not going to do.
I can't.
I don't hear sound.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I can't hear you, Julia. I didn't know if it was just me.
Sorry, that was my fault. Yeah, I'm on a touch screen. Should be better now. Um, So yeah, to clarify, obviously it doesn't. If it doesn't work, then it can't be effective. But what I was trying to get at was the fact that the anti-whites have such a good radar, um, that they even pick up on very white positive focused uh, approaches like ours means I still think that speaks to the effectiveness of the approach, and it is effective in places where we can actually speak, like on X, so or YouTube even. So, and even Discord. I've done some. I've been able to do some swashing on Discord, and even gotten people have reported me, and I've gotten those overturned. So, yeah, Discord is a place that we might want to try swashing some more. And there's a lot of young people there too, and many Vigs. Biospirit.
Yeah, you are correct that the method itself does work. So the difference with these extremely anti-white platforms is when we use the Go Free method, they're flummoxed, so that they don't know how to respond to us because they've never encountered it before. So they use the anti-white narrative like a cudgel, and they throw out the anti-white slurs, and they expect the person that they're doing that to cave immediately and submit. And so we're quite immune to that, and we don't, and we we just we just plug right along there, and they get enraged by that because their way of controlling people is to use the all of these little anti-white tricks that they have. And when that doesn't work, the only thing that they have left is to annihilate us, to shut us down, or the same thing that they did to Charlie Kirk. That they were so enraged because they could not beat him in debate. They could not. They couldn't make him stop talking with their anti-white slurs and attacks, and so they went to the next level. And that's what they do on these platforms to us. It's the same thing. I mean, if they could do that to us in person, they would. But on these platforms, they annihilate us and make us go away, which is effectively it kills you if your account becomes useless. So in that sense, yes, the Go Free method still works because their way of
I am. Oh yeah, looks like you dropped out. All right, let me give that back to you. I was wondering if I was the only one not hearing you. So you should have the mic now. Go ahead.
Sorry, I dropped out there. I was pretty much at the end of what I was saying, and X kicked me out. I guess the anti-whites at X decided I had said too much. Huh.
Maybe so. We never know who's listening. Um, Hans.
Well, Biospirit, it sounds like you are on space internet. Maybe you should get real internet. But I want to also comment on that, and that is that I think part of the reason why my Twitter account lasted so long was also because I did not engage with anti-whites. At least I tried not to. And only when they have large audiences. And I think that's also something we should we should make part of our general tactics is that we just block the anti-whites, because they cause a lot of trouble for your account, especially these Antifa types that are hooked into these networks. And I suspect that's what happened to my account. So I think, before you react, just look at the audience of that person. If it's an anti-white with a small audience, just block him. Because even on Twitter, we are exposed by these people.
What do you think about just muting them instead? In which case, you also still can't be drawn into any sort of obviously argument with them because you don't see their tweets. Um, I just feel like blocking people, like the person has won if I block them. And I've heard good arguments as to why that isn't the case, but it's just a kind of a personal thing. Maybe I just have to get over it and just learn to block the the horrible anti-whites. Maybe I haven't come across one enough horrible enough yet to want to block, although I feel like I've come across some pretty bad ones. But I just feel like I lose if I block them. And so I feel like muting where they don't know that I'm ignoring them is more powerful. Um, and I would hope that if they were to start harassing me, like posting horrible things in response to all of my tweets, that someone would tell me, right? Because that's, or I could just go view as without being signed in regularly and check for that or something like that, I guess. Um, yeah, what do you think of that approach? Do you think that that can be viable? Do I need to just let go of this idea that uh, blocking is in any way losing? I understand that, like, yeah, if I have 2,000 followers and I'm arguing with an anti-white who has no picture and has 3 followers, it's pretty pointless. But and I try no longer to engage with those people. But sometimes my blood gets up, and I sometimes I just want to hone my skills, or even if I'm not honing them, feel like I'm honing them, I guess.
I never feel like the loser when I block them. I feel like, because it's usually a reply block where I will tell them they have nothing value to add. They will not contribute at all to the recapture of our destiny. There's no point. They voted themselves out of the conversation, so they should just stop talking. So from my perspective, they have no value if they don't have an audience. And I'm underlining that by turning my back on them metaphorically. So I see where, if you block someone with a larger audience, then I can see how that can be interpreted as, you can't win the argument, because you're not only arguing with the person, you're speaking to the audience. But an anti-white with no audience is just a voice screaming in the void, and you can just tune him out. Now, I agree that you can also just tune him out, but I want him to know. I want him to know that I don't value his opinion, um, and that there's no further point in, because when you mute him, um, they may still try to get to you in some way, because they have these psychological barbs that they send. But now, I mean, this is a funny story. Um, at some point, there's an Indian lady that called every Saturday morning at 6 a.m. Because she got, my wife, at one point told it not to call us again because she was selling something. And then she started phoning us in the morning. And then my wife would go off on it. because and then I told my wife, no, what you should do is you should just not, you should answer the phone and let her speak, but just don't answer. And then after a while, um, she gave up because we would pick up and then she would speak, but we wouldn't react. So she because so yes, muting can work. I mean, it worked in this case, but yeah, so that's an option if you want to. I block them. I want them to know that I don't want to hear from them again. But I mean, it's personal preference, I guess. But it's definitely not. I don't feel like I lost the argument. I tell them why I don't want to. I don't want to hear from them again.
I think that really makes a big difference. The fact that you um, reply, quote them, and then right, like you quote tweet them and say, you know, I'm not talking to you anymore, and this is why. And I like the way that you frame it, where they need to know, because I've always believed that shame is a powerful tool that we need to use more. And if we can get anti-whites, and this is part of the way we practice, right? We call them scum. We call them out for what they are. You know, they're POSs, they're scum, they're vile, they're evil, and we call them that, as we should. And so, if we can, you know, work that into that reply, which is easily done, right? You just say, well, you're obviously just an evil anti-white will who hates my people. You want me gone, and you refuse to engage with me in this civil manner. So I'm blocking you. That to me speaks a lot more, because I feel like um it's making a statement to the rest of the world, that, because as you say, you're right, we're always talking more to the audience than we are to just the interlocutor we're speaking with directly. And yeah, it shows the world that these people are shameful and should be ashamed of themselves. And I think that's a really important precedent for us to start setting, or to continue setting, because we're already doing it. So thank you. I will yeah, I will try blocking more in the future, in this manner, and continue to use shame as a tool. Blue Flame, I believe you were next.
You know, when it comes to blocking or being blocked, usually when I interact with anti-whites, they block me long before it's even a consideration with me. Um, the few instances where I decided to block an anti-white first, usually that's pretty far down a string already of back and forths. But yeah, it's like what you say. It's about how many people are watching. Now, at some point, it's like if one or two people are still keeping an eye on it, then I'm already even disinterested to continue in and of itself. To me, it's like, okay, mission accomplished. You know, the people saw an anti-white being put in his place, or at the very least getting, some return fire. And if that is all they see, I would say that's enough, because it will teach people, it's like, hey, when some of these freaks come at you, you can simply do the same thing. At the very minimum, from the interactions that I have with anti-whites, it's and that's actually rare. Usually, it's I would say 98, if not 99% of the time, uh, you stand you stand so much taller than they are. You know, they've fallen from their sockets that they put themselves up and have no place standing on. And it's like that 1% that's remaining. Um, yeah, by the time that I block them, it's when how do we even explain this? I've seen anti-whites who, it all starts with, oh, white people bad, blah, 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 the usual. But you press them long enough, like you simply refuse to give in. And I have had on one or two or three separate occasions anti-whites who literally, like, you cannot make it up, start blathering absolute craziness, just utter insanity, um, into these chat boxes simply to have the last word, and it will be about, it will be nothing about nothing, but they must have that final word in there. And at that point, when some of them, the few times that did happen, uh, I at that point I'd simply decide, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna block him, because they have already shown what, at that point, well, yeah, that they're deeply disturbed individuals, right? Like in the moment, like they're completely lost in their hatred, in their envy, or whatever, in that seething rage that they can't one up you. And at that point, you really have won. It's that whole thing where one party goes absolutely mental, and everyone can see, well, everyone with a healthy mind can see, and that's good enough. Maybe one other exception is when, um yeah, this only happened like the one time, and it was actually a juice perk. Well, it was an anti-white one. It's like the whole thing of, that he insisted, or she, that everyone needs to go after Jews, and in the meantime, you can't talk on behalf of white well-being. So, like anti-Jewish and also an anti-white, so particularly nasty character. Put the character, put him or her in his or her place, but then, like, after a while, kept like like commenting on stuff that I commented, and again, complete nutball nonsense, where at which point it's just like, okay, so you basically plead insanity, so you go right ahead, and I'm gonna go block you. you know it's as far as it goes with confronting anti-whites. I used to go a bit more out of my way to do so, but now it's almost automatic response, and I find that most of my replies are very minimal. So minimal, like um, it's almost laughable. Like you couldn't believe that it actually works sometimes. I would, for example, more recently, like I see an anti type something out, and I would simply make a statement such as, "Oh, look, an anti-white is raging because anti-whiteism is called out." That's it, and I can pretty much copy paste that one. With all anti-whites, like, it couldn't be more simple, and you don't give them anything to respond snarkily with when you do that. They'll the best they have is then either to immediately shut up, which some of them do, and then most, they're like, "Oh, anti-whiteism, doesn't exist, blah blah blah." And it's like, and then and then I simply continue at that point. It's like, look, anti-white, anti-white seething that he or she is being called out as anti-white. Yeah, but it doesn't exist. It's like anti-white denying to be anti-white while being an anti-white. Like, it's almost, it's basically kind of childish, but because they themselves are stunted, that is kind of their level, but it's still clear enough for people who are seeing it. It's like, what kind of a creep this is? Because if you're not anti-white and someone accuses you of that, the healthy natural response is like, no, I'm not. Why are you calling me that? Right? But in their immediate anger, they actually, for people who can sense that, or who have an eye for it, they do admit they are, because they immediately get defensive. Normal people are like, I'm not anti-white. What are you talking about? Don't be stupid. And then but an anti-white is immediately like, no, it doesn't exist. It's not a thing. Stop calling me out. And just so silly. And um, before I see others want to speak, so I'll add one little thing. It's like, and you can do this, like, as long as they keep going, right? Just this one sentence. Like it's, I mean, I'm at the point where it's become a bit boring to call them out. It used to be a little exciting. Now it's just like rinse, repeat. Like there's barely even an individual twist among them. Like you can, the line I just mentioned is like, anti-white sieving, that anti-whiteism is called out. That one, you can literally copy paste that with all of them, and you'll see them respond to it, or ignore it, pretend it's not there, but then you've left the last comment. And yeah, it's like they're trying to start something or what have you, but you won't let them, because it's also so emotionally devoid. It's just you walk in there, sort of, yeah, you just walk in there, you call it out, and you're out again. They reply something, you repeat the line, or you have a slight variant on whatever they're doing, right? It's like, are they being angry about it? Are they being hysterical? Whatever. And then you just simply say that. You just describe what they're doing. The crowd will know. And I mean, as far as needing to block any anti-whites at that point, I really can't say it's been needed at all in a long time. It's like the instances that I speak of, it's like here, there, once in a blue moon. So I don't know, maybe that's helpful. And for anyone else out there, and for anti-whites who might be listening, yeah, I mean, if I see you do it, you're gonna get it too. It's coming, and more people are learning it by the day. So let's go. Yeah, but I'll leave it here because I see others want to speak too.
Thank you. I really appreciate those tips. For anyone who doesn't know, um, I only read Go Free, or finished Go Free. I started reading it like in January, but it was it's I've never taken so long to finish a book before. Sorry, actually, there might be an exception. I've never taken so long to finish a well-written nonfiction book before, and that's because, of course, it is full of information that needs to be fully assimilated. And uh, I did all the exercises, and I wanted to really get the most out of it. And I need to read it again as well, of course, because there's so much in there. So I'm pretty new to swashbuckling, and I've only been, I think, on the outreach team for like 6 months or so. So I'm still learning. I definitely have gotten pretty quickly to the point where when people just like uh, can't do anything but resort to ad hominems, I just don't even respond to those people. So there are a lot of people I don't respond to because, yeah, I can tell they're not worth my time. Um, but yeah, sometimes I'm in a mood where I don't have quite so much self control, or I look at the person's profile and I see they do have a lot of followers. And even if they're very virulently anti-white, I feel like I have to respond to them. And so, yeah, no, I appreciate these tips, and I will put them into use and see how that feels. So thank you for all of that. I appreciate that. I had to get up for a moment, so I'm not sure who is next. So we'll go by the honor system. Whoever was first, if you know who you were, speak now.
I believe it was me. And so the only thing I wanted to add to that was one of the things that they always suggest to you if you are making a complaint about another account is to block them. And so I always feel that if these anti-whites are trying to get at us by reporting us, if the person that they're the moderator who's looking at that complaint sees that I've already blocked them, then to me that kind of more shows that they're being the aggressor in the um, in the interaction. So that's just another little side thing. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is that as Jason has said, just do at the most 3 back and forths with someone who's rabidly anti-white, just to leave a trail of good responses for anyone who might see it. But a chain any longer than that really is not going to be seen, and you're just getting pulled into the you're just getting pulled into the anti-white narrative by the anti-white who is trying to use up your time and energy from being able to reach people who are reachable and can be converted to white well-being. So those are just a couple things I wanted to mention.
Thank you. I did not know that about how it works in an altercation like that where moderation gets involved, but that makes sense. So that's very good knowledge to have. I appreciate that. Um, I don't think that I think it's pretty rare for me to go past more than 3 interactions. So I hadn't heard that. So again, thank you for telling me that wisdom from Jason. But yeah, that just has naturally sort of, I guess, been where I guess I naturally realize it that you don't um, really get much further if you go beyond that. Um, or typically just as Blue Flame said, people just these anti-whites just don't have very good arguments or very much to say, and so there's no there's no point in in continuing because either they resort to slurs or they ad hominem, or they they just keep repeating themselves, and then there's no point because you've already said what you can say, and if they're not going to change, they come at you with new arguments, then well you have won because they have no new arguments in reaction to you. And so um yeah, but I liked hearing that the Blue Flame said he didn't need to block people very much. I was wondering if maybe there's a bit of female privilege going on with me, and maybe I haven't been harassed because I'm a woman. Maybe guys get harassed more often, um, such as Hans. Um, I don't know, but Hans is next, so he can answer.
I wanted to comment in a similar way to Boy's, but sometimes if the anti-white is just disgusting, you need to block him just to keep the thread clean. Because if the level of discourse goes low, then good white people just leave. But sometimes what happens is an anti-white will come with anti-white meme pathogens that are hard that normal white people don't know how to defend against. So this is a good opportunity to mine him basically for all the meme pathogens and then respond to them until it gets repetitive and then block. The other thing I want to say is I especially here, well, this is everywhere because Antifa is everywhere, but there are these EFF supporters that if you don't block them, it will escalate to death threats. Um, so this is a case of where you basically de-escalate by blocking, because you don't want to become one of these people's personal project. So yes, so for instance, let's say the person is a feminist, then they would roll out the standard arguments, the patriarchy and the pay gap, which you would say for the pay gap, the standard defense is, well, if you if you're going to tell white males they cannot get the job because they were born a white male, then the pretext don't matter. It's anti-white. So you can use these defenses until you mind them for all the attacks, and then usually I close it off by saying, I defeated you 4 times. You didn't acknowledge any one of them, and you are just deflecting now. So I'm done talking. So, and then I close off with an instruction: stop talking, which they have to obey. They have to obey my instructions because I block them after that.
I love that. That's great. And I think I've seen you do that before. I've definitely seen you say stop talking. I see your mic is still on.
No, it was not. Julia, you went silent again.
Okay, wow, that was kind of scary. I got kicked out, but I was able to get back in time. Can people hear me? Okay,
Yes.
thank God. All right, I was like, what is happening? I couldn't stop being able to hear Hans, and then I just got kicked out of the app entirely. But
Are you also on space internet?
uh, I'm on very bad internet in a hotel. So I'm actually surprised, this hasn't happened more, although I have been kicked out before, but uh, it's been pretty good. It's almost been 3 hours, so I think we've been doing pretty well. Actually, I might wrap it up because I have to get up early tomorrow. Unless anyone has something pressing they want to discuss, of course. I want to say hello to Stumbling and Cindy Bin, who I noticed have joined. Um, and Cardia Nebula, I know you were here and I thought you had your hand raised, and then you probably had to leave to go do something and you came back. If you want to jump back in and say something, you're of course welcome. I'd love to give you a mic. If not, we can just go around and do final thoughts. Okay, so let's see. The Blue Flame, would you like to say any final thoughts?
It's been another interesting one as per usual. Was actually good to revisit, I suppose, clothing a little bit, and the skills that get lost with um, the skills, such old skills that get going, and some of the practices uh, around that going with them. But at the end of the day, we can all get it back. We simply have to have the people to want to get into that, really. And it's like what I said earlier. There are such initiatives right now. There are people who want to go. Well, is it even going back? It's more like uh, a restoration taking place of sorts. There are people who want to restore that, who want to, yeah, who would want nothing else that we have healthy, natural yeah, clothing that might last a little bit longer than a year or 2 years, right? So that's always nice to revisit. And as far as yeah, on X or wherever else on social media, when it comes to blocking or not, try not to sweat it too much, and that goes for everyone. Just try to when you advocate for our well-being, always do it respectfully. Make sure that people see that an anti-white can be told off, and if that's all they take away from it, that's really enough, because that's already where we win. I really would say is that anti-whites only go so far as we permit them. Right? They're guilt tripping, um, trying to break us down, trying to slander us, all of that stuff that we seem to be very sensitive for is altogether something that still requires a certain degree of our approval. And if we simply deny them that approval, then they can say and do whatever they want. And if on and that would stop a lot of them weaseling themselves into places they have no business being. If on top of that we restore our societies in a manner wherein they get punished for the evils they do towards us, well, I mean, then we're one step away from actual conclusive victories against this phenomenon, right? This evil. So yeah, nobody needs to be a hero in particular, although everyone is a hero who stands up for us, especially these days. Um, but a little contribution here or there on the regular, and encouraging your friends and family, uh, and maybe some acquaintances too, to at least learn a little bit here and learn a little bit there. Then eventually we will go through this gray zone of moral vagary, if you will. But eventually, white well-being lies at the end of that. And from there, we're going to have very, very ideal societies in waiting for us, because we're going to have the people who want to create that. And that is totally doable in our lifetimes, I would say. So, yeah. With that said, yeah, did really good, Julia. You did excellent as well in hosting the whole place, and very well done. For everyone in general, you enjoy the rest of your day or your evening, and talk soon. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and appreciate you speaking as well. I appreciate all the tips. I was just thinking, I think part of the issue for me is that I have always been a huge free speech advocate, and so I feel this guilt when I block or mute or anything like that. Like I'm infringing, I'm censoring, I'm infringing on others' right to speech. But now I'm realizing that I need to really realign my priorities, and that there are more important norms that I need to uphold over that, when it comes to fighting anti-whiteism and spreading the go free approach. So thank you for that. Biospirit.
Yeah, and always keep in mind that the the quote unquote free speech that anti-whites use and purvey is merely lies. So they're spreading lies, and it's provably that they are not giving anybody truth. So that to me is something that I keep in mind when I'm interacting with them, that they have nothing to offer, but they're like the devil. They're just there to lie to people. And then the other thing I wanted to say in closing is my compliments to you, Julia. You are an excellent hostess, and you have a gift for being able to um, respond after someone is done speaking, and uh, and and fill in that time void with uh, something that means that has meaning to it, and that is a gift that I do not have myself. So I'm always amazed when you do that, and Hans does it. Tree Godfather does it. The other hosts do it, and I when if I were in your position, there would be a big uh, gap of no speaking, because I just don't have that gift. So I compliment you on it, and thank you for taking up the torch and doing this.
Thank you. I've never thought of that as one of my gifts. I always just think of it as I dislike long silences, and I like to do everything quickly. And so I but I do listen very intently, or I try to listen to, and I get very hyper focused, which I consider a blessing. So I think that helps. So I feel required to respond, and I always we have such amazing people in this community that there's always something to respond to, and so it's not difficult for me. Um, but yeah, I guess I have been blessed. I didn't ever think of it that way, but thank you. I really appreciate that. Hans, finally, you're the last.
I must agree with Pius, but Julia, lovely space, and I'm never sure where you're going to take the conversation. Sometimes it goes in surprising ways. Now, I mean, we started with this um, invention of the flying shuttle, and we saw how those weavers rioted, because think about the weaver who had a 7-year apprenticeship and he just became a craftsman, and now this invention comes along that's going to wipe his 7 years away. um, and in the same way, these white negative people have deep investments in their positions that is very hard to come back from if they did that in public, especially. And that is another reason why they are not really our audience. Um, our audience are the millions of white people with a positive white identity. So even the white negatives, I treat them like anti-whites. I would block them early and often. And I don't feel bad about it at all. Jason, I think Jason um, coined this lovely meme curative, which is, we're not going to let ourselves be virtue trapped into values that anti whites don't hold. So don't feel guilty at all.
That is beautifully said and definitely true. I definitely struggle with wanting to always hold the moral high grind, high, uh, high ground, even though my victimizers are not necessarily doing the same or frequently fighting very dirty. And I'm very against fighting dirty, but this is an existential fight to the, I mean, death, or for our survival. So yeah, I have to realign and do whatever is necessary, and it's hard for me, but I think I'm learning to do it slowly. It's just going to take a little while, I think, but I really appreciate all of the advice and wonderful compliments. Thank you so much. So I'm going to read the outro now, which I finally have. Yay! This has been the Wednesday edition of the Shade Tree White Wellbeing NWG Space. We meet here daily at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on X. We practice the Go Free lexicon and concepts as developed by Jason Kuna, Mr. No White Guilt himself. You can find him here on X as at No White Guilt NWG, elsewhere as simply No White Guilt, and on the web at nowhiteguilt.org. I want to thank each and every one of the speakers and all of you who showed up to listen. You make all this space possible by bringing your diverse skill sets and intelligence here for all of us to share. Without all of your participation as speakers or listeners, it would just be me, an older woman, rambling into space. And I'm not that interesting, although I try, because nothing is worse than being boring in my book, except being anti white. That's worse. Uh, Thanks again. I truly appreciate you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, or night. I love you all, and I hope to see you tomorrow.